Hello, everybody. This is E.A.R. I'm Barry Walsh. I'm the host of a show called The American Doofus Show. Don't be a doofus. Tonight, however, this is an E.A.R. panel. We're having a discussion on race, an open discussion on an incredibly divisive topic. I'm joined by Apollo and Star, two of the founding board members of E.A.R. And our guests tonight are King and Marie. Marie Justus and King are with us. So hello to the two of you.
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Pleasure to be here.
So
Great to be here.
to kind of bring things out, because this just popped into my head. When I think of racism, when I think of the term racism, the first thing that pops into my mind is going back to being 5 or 6 years old and riding in the car with my dad and mom from Indiana to Florida for a vacation and stopping in Georgia, and there being a water fountain there that had two different sides to it. And one side it said whites only, and the other side it said coloreds. That's all it said, just said coloreds. And I asked my dad, why there were two fountains. And he said, this one is for white people and this one is for black people. And I said, does something happen when black people touch the water? And, I'm just being an inquisitive kid. And he says, no, nothing like that at all. And I said, can I drink out of it? And he said, well, if you really want to, sure. And he picks me up and I take a drink out of it. And this guy that's like this is in front of a courthouse. This guy that's like, in the grass, I don't know how far away, seemed like a long way away when I was a little kid, yelled, hey, what are you doing? And started running towards us. And my dad's holding me up and the guy says, that's for coloreds. And I said, I colored last night. And my dad put me down and said, go to the car. And I was like excited. And he said, go to the car. So, he shoved me and I knew he was upset. So I walked to the car and my dad and this man had a conversation. And my dad came back and got in the car, said, we're getting out of this town. And we had stopped and ate at a diner and we're just, looking around. Anyway, and I had another incident that impacted me later on in Florida. And those two instances resonated with me. And I'm the last generation that has any contact with what it was like before the 60s and before action was taken. Mm-hmm. And especially with King on here and being a young man, this is not just a black and white thing. This is a thing that is deeply rooted in our culture as a country, and it should have been uprooted right after the Civil War, and it should have never existed, of course. All right, let me clarify that, but it did exist, and it could have been much different had things turned out a little bit differently right after the Civil War ended. That didn't happen that way, and we went another direction, and we never made a correction. And in my opinion, the time for correction is well past, but we have to seriously start it now and not just give it lip service, but show power and might and strength in numbers, peacefully and through unity. And I ask all of you, when you hear the word racism, what comes to your mind? And let's start with our guests. Let's start with Let's start with Marie Justus, ladies first.
Thank you. Well, a lot of things, I guess. Growing up, you know, in the South, you heard people talk. You heard people, not in my home. I didn't have that. I wasn't raised where really my parent, in an environment where they put down anybody. It just wasn't like a negative type environment. So, but I will say that, extended family, like I would hear derogatory things, and it just, from a young age, it bothered me. It bothered me to the point to where I didn't want, and I didn't know why it bothered me. I didn't really even know what they were talking about because I was so young. But it just felt wrong. That's the only way I can describe it, is that it felt wrong. And so from that age on, I started questioning why people would act that way and have so much hatred towards other people that apparently, to me, there was no wrong done, so from why would I hear people, that were my ancestors talking like with so much hate when I didn't feel like there was no reason to have that. I always, kind of just equated it to fear,
Yeah.
And misunderstanding. And so as soon as I could, I just separated, myself from having to be in that type of environment, because I thought that it would take me, because I just felt it was wrong even before I knew why. And I had friends of from a very young age, from preschool, of all types, like, Asian background, African American, like all kind of backgrounds. And I remember when I would go, to extended family members' houses, hearing remarks and jokes made about like my friends or whatever. And I didn't understand it. I didn't understand it. And so it's been interesting navigating it in the South.
And I'm glad you brought it up because it is going to be something that we're going to have to talk about with other white people, that people in the Black community don't understand, that there are those of us that, for whatever reason, we just knew it was wrong.
Yeah.
You just knew, that it was wrong. And there are a lot of us out there like that. There are a lot that aren't. But there are a lot of us that are like that. And I think opening up about it will allow other people to go, yeah, you know what, I'm like that, and it's okay. And that's important for unity. That's
I have a
important.
question for Marie.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a great summary. And do you think that, you talk about your friends when you were little that were in school, and sounds like you were even though you were in the South, you were in a desegregated school. Do you think that had a lot to do with how you felt? Because you're living amongst these human beings, these people that, as a little person, hatred is taught, I think. And so as you're living amongst these little people, and then you go home and you hear that, do you think the fact that you had that exposure had something to do with how you felt?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I do. I mean, I really do. And I feel like when we're children, as young kids, that's when we're sponges, and when we really, we're like a slate that's being written upon. And I, I think that it made a difference. Like, and in my school, like, it's you know, I'd say it was like 87% white. But then, you know, I kind of put it upon myself too to have that exposure when I may not have necessarily just been exposed to it by chance. Does that make sense? Like,
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
like you know, I never really was part of one certain group. More, I would, you know, allow myself to be uncomfortable and
Yeah.
you know, mingle with other people and get to know people. And like some of my best friends to this day are because I said, you know, I'm not staying over here in this corner. I'm going over there, you know, and I'm talking, I'm making friends, I'm, you know, and and even, you know, when I was in high school, you know, things would be said. I mean, it was the 90s, you know. I don't know, things would be said if you were hanging out with groups that didn't look like you. But I just um
You had the courage.
yeah. And you know, I looked at it as they lacked an understanding that I didn't have. And I looked at it as, you know, that hopefully they would come into that understanding, you know, and that you know, that they would at some point choose to see people as spiritual beings. We're all spiritual beings. We're just in different vehicles. And I just feel like and I chose empathy, you know, like that always helped me. Like if I lead with empathy and trying to understand across the board, and if I can't understand, put myself in an uncomfortable setting or situation to where I'm not around anybody that looks like me, and I ask questions, you know. And so I think that makes a difference. And you know, I really think that as children, like when you're young and being exposed to an environment that you have all types of people, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
King, let's get you in the conversation. I think TWrecks is trying to join us. I don't know if he's hooked up yet or not. TWrecks, if you're with us, hello.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Much respect to everybody on the panel.
We
Welcome.
are basically we're just opening up. We just got started. We're just talking what the term racism brings to our head. And King, I was just about to ask you, young man, when you hear the term racism, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
I think when we talk about racism, you know, we have to really just think about history. And what history tells us about racism is race was never meant to be a thing. Race has always been a social construct. And no offense to Europeans, but Europeans, they created that term of race. And race was really created to divide the
Absolutely.
socially challenged, is what I call them,
Yeah.
versus the elite. Okay.
Yes.
Um, so when I think about race now, I don't even think it's more so of
Do you think it's more an economic term?
it's more an economic term, because when you look at history, and I'm going to refer back to history because history tells us everything we need to know to move forward and to correct everything that has happened the past 5 to 600 years. And when we look at, you know, racism now, we look at um, the founding of America, and then how when we fast forward 400 or 500 years later, we realize that almost 100% of America's wealth, land, and pretty much equity was maldistributed amongst the dominant white society. And I think there were engineers behind keeping the African American, or even the, you know, I call it the brown people, because at the end of the day, it's not even about African people at this point. The goal was to keep blacks or native blacks subordinate to whites, and at this point now subordinates to Asians, subordinate to Hispanics, subordinate to everybody. And we've been relegated to the lowest level of society. And, I think we need to take a look at history and really understand history to realize that this was built this way. And I always tell people, I'm like, think of it like this. Think of it like, I'm sure everybody on here has played Monopoly before, right? I hope so. So in Monopoly, think of it as you have one person, before the game even starts, they have 90% of all the profits, all the money in the bank, and they have 90% of all of the land on
It's a great analogy right there.
Yeah.
Then you get,
that's my sister, because she was like,
That's a great analogy, my man.
I'm going to have all the money.
yep, and then you get us. We come into the game real late, fourth quarter, last 2 minutes, and we try to buy up some land. We try to obtain some wealth, and it makes it virtually impossible.
Mix in a little Jim Crow with that.
Absolutely. It makes it impossible to obtain wealth. So I think when I look at racism in today's terms, I look at it as an economical, structured plan to relegate us and keep us permanently boxed to the lowest levels of society. So that's how I look at racism in today's terms.
All right.
That's excellent. And if I can add to that, King, it's a power dynamic for sure, and it's global. It's not just here. There is a caste system. You can find a caste system and a power dynamic based on race in every culture. It permeates every country on this planet.
Right.
And it is based on, if you think about history, going back to history, you think about a lot of the Europeans that came here, the feudal lords. Well, they had in bondage pretty much. They had like peasants that were working in the field.
Yep.
And even though, and their racial construct was based around the English and the Irish.
Right.
And those were two groups of white people,
Right.
European people with the same skin color. And so if you think about it, it really is like King pointed out, it's a power dynamic, and there's an element of the haves and have-nots upon which it stands, and it exists and it continues.
Right. And I think the problem that our community is having, I don't know if I'm moving along too fast, but I'm really excited to talk about the subject because it seems like for too long we've been focused on the wrong things. We're focused on civil rights.
You're not moving too fast, brother. You keep preaching.
We're worried about
it's refreshing.
When we need to be worried about economical rights. We need to be worried about economical power. When you look at the Jews, and when they came to this country, a broken, poor people in bondage, they didn't seek to be accepted or assimilated into society. They sought wealth, and they obtained wealth. And, they did it through pretty much political interest, institutional power, and group economics. Yeah. And we have not practiced none of those three. We haven't practiced any type of institutional power. We haven't practiced any group economics at all. We let everybody come into our community, take our money, and go feed their family, go feed their community, go feed their country. But if you go to Chicago or California or any Little Havana, there are no black businesses. There are no white businesses. It's only whatever, ethnicity group allowed to do business. And so I think we do a lot of inappropriate behavior that pretty much causes us to not move ahead as a race. And I think we don't need to focus on civil rights as much as we need to focus on economical rights.
Yeah, that's E.A.R. E.A.R. is going to be focusing on the civil rights part of it. E.A.R. is going to be focusing, we're not going to be in the communities putting grocery stores in.
Right.
That stuff needs to be done by every tiny piece all together will bring us that power to be able to go forward and say, listen to us.
Exactly.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the infighting in our community, because the infighting is always about okay, well, this isn't working. We need all of it in order to work. I mean, we need a Hail Mary at this point in history for the Black community.
But I think we have to be fair though, King, in terms of, and this is not a blame game, it's just history. Again, we have to remember, and I always say this, when people came across the docks in Ellis Island, they came in through the front door.
Right.
When we came in on those slave ships, you know, in the South, in the southern states, we came in through the back door.
Right.
And so when you have a history that's steeped in chattel slavery, miseducation, when it's a crime to read a book, you can lose your life for reading a book. So there's some catching up to do for sure. But two things we have to remember: we didn't start at the same place, and the system upon which racism and that power dynamic still exists to push certain people down. So we have to be, I think we have to be fair about that. But I agree that we do have to start practicing group economics, but we have to get into the power construct for sure.
Right. Yep.
TWrecks, you want to hop in here? Thank you for joining us, by the way.
Great conversation. Thanks for having me on the show, man. I appreciate it.
So when you hear the word racism, what's the first thing pops in your head?
First thing that pops in my head is that there's only 3 races. That's white, non-white, and white supremacists. Let me repeat that. Whites, non-whites, and white supremacists. Those are the only 3 races that exist on the planet.
All right.
Okay. And I just want to say, you know, we can't, you know, we want to go back to history. We can't forget that the original Black slaves in America were the only, and still are the only, non-immigrants to this country.
Yep.
We were brought over here. We did not come over here from failed countries from Europe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to keep that in mind the entire time. You understand?
Yeah. It always cracks me up when I hear a white supremacist say, well, go back where you came from. Well, chances are they came, you know, from Detroit or from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
You know, they're Americans.
Yeah, man.
Hello.
Well, let's face it, there was no
even though
America until they brought
didn't
slaves
come over here on their own.
You know?
It's funny too, because new evidence here pretty much since about 2010 has pointed that there were already, you know, Africans here.
11,000 years ago.
Right.
You can find artifacts in Arkansas that date back, Black faces on artifacts in Arkansas that are 11,000 years old. Period.
The Olmec heads and the
Olmec heads, you know.
So I think the key, honestly, to really being able to cure this is just the correct history, because we already know that history is always his story. You know, if you have somebody painting the history of another people's culture, then there's going to be a lot of misconceptions and inconsistencies.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because Apollo, Star, myself, the other people that are currently involved, and I hope all of you become involved with E.A.R. But we've been talking about things we're going to do, and we're going to do a mentor program on a different level than has been done before, and we're going to try to unite different cultures, people of different cultures. We're going to get an app, but one thing I haven't mentioned to them that I wanted to do, I want to have a real history class, history class.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
You know, I think that's an integral part of what we do, because Marie Justus mentioned it, fear and ignorance and just not understanding, and we can play a part in that, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to share kind of a I lived in Hawaii for like 12 years, and
Love Hawaii.
And man, let me tell you,
Been there twice.
I really felt like I was for the first few years, I was like, man, I feel like I'm like, you know, from home. You know, everybody treated me like I was from down home. And so what I learned later that I didn't know was that a lot of the Polynesian cultures came out of Africa. And so I didn't really learn that history until I went to like Kihei and I went to like Hilo, and I talked to the real Hawaiians who were very dark-skinned people, um, Polynesian mixed with a lot of African phenotypes. And they would tell me, a lot of the elders said, when King Kamehameha was trying to unite, they were at war and they were trying to unite those islands. When he got in trouble, he phoned home to Africa. The elders will tell you that. And I think when people come to Hawaii, they don't realize that, that the true Hawaiian people are African people that have mixed in with a lot of the Asian people and become Polynesian. They've just become Polynesian to some people, but those are Africans.
Right.
And when you look at the phenotype, I mean, there are some people there with afros, even the Samoan people, afros bigger than any of us have here. You know, I was just like, okay, that's why I feel at home. But it took me 3 years to understand why I felt like I was with kindred spirits, and had the elders tell me that.
If I could add, people don't realize, and this is why, this whitewash history, no offense to any.
None taken.
This whitewash history needs to stop, because people don't realize that Africans sailed every inch of this globe. So any island, any country, even Europe, was inhabited by dark-skinned Africans at some point in the history of this earth. And there's archaeological findings that will support that theory. There's folklore that will support that theory. It's so much evidence that points to that versus it pointing to what history is trying to tell us, that these are Asians or these are Polynesians or these are made up races, okay? They make these races up to divide us when we are all, even you, Barry, Irish, we are all from the motherland of Africa. And it amazes me how people think that, like somebody said, all these different races. There's only one race, and that's the human race. There's
only three
subdivisions. There's different subdivisions.
Period.
But at the end of the day, we have touched every inch of this earth, including Australia, including, Haiti, every inch of this earth, African people have touched. And that's why, it's so important that we know this history so we can understand. And this, I don't want to call
Let me hop in here real quick, if you don't mind. Earlier,
so ignorance will, not be of an issue.
Go ahead.
I just want to hop in real quick. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I just want to say, from my background as a Black American, my father, he served 30 years in the Air Force. So I grew up on military bases. The first time I ever got called a nigger by a white person was in 3rd grade by another 3rd grader. And I can't remember if I told my mother or I told the teacher. I can't even remember how I even knew it. I think I went home and told my mom, and then they got a hold of the school, and the kid's dad got docked like rank for it, apparently.
Yay.
But that was the very first time as a 3rd grader that I experienced that. So it runs deep, and this was back in the 80s, So the government of the United States has actively tried to exterminate Black people, even through the Reagan administration with the crack epidemic. They didn't call it an epidemic, of course. It was just lock them up, when you kill each other. But it was actively created. In the basement of UCLA, the CIA paid Ron Siegel. Look it up. Ron Siegel testified in court that the CIA paid him for 14 years to create crack for the sole purpose of exterminating Black people. But we survived it because we're strong people, First it was the heroin back in the 40s and 50s, but we're so strong. Now white supremacy has kind of backed itself up in a corner. Even Joe Biden was talking about white Americans are going to be the minority in 2040. He sounded like David Duke, man. Those are words out of David Duke's mouth. That was his first briefing to his cabinet.
Mhm.
So they're backed up in a corner, and I'll repeat it again. There's only three races: whites, non-whites, and white supremacists. And white supremacists will go for the long game. They'll go for 50, 60 years. They are deceit and lies that has no time limit for them. They will push a lie. And let me ask you this too. Right now, what happened on the 6th is a learning lesson. There's so many things you can learn from that as far as infiltration of law enforcement and the judicial system and the people running this country. Is they're getting locked up left and right for infiltrating, for doing what they did for Trump. A lot of them getting slaps on the wrist, you know, but it's a learning lesson for black folks, and they need to really wake up, because that's going to be the trend for 2021. You're going to see more and more of these people running up into these buildings all over the country. That's the trend for 2021, period. You're going to see a lot more of it.
Yeah,
You
I
know?
think TWrecks is right. We just got a notification here in my area, across the city and across the region. The FBI has put out notifications that be on alert. People are going to be attacking people. You know, they actually put out a memo in a lot of the organizations within DC and Maryland and Virginia, and just be on high alert. So
I had
it's not over.
I had that on the episode of the show the other night, that I'd been getting buzz, and to keep an eye out in case it started hitting the mainstream media. So,
You know, one more thing.
I think masks, where the same Trump people are going to be the same one that refuse to ever wear a mask, because it's even if they're not white supremacists, they're white privileged.
They won't even wear a mask when they're breaking the law. Ain't that
Absolutely.
something?
Exactly.
The
That
same
was
people
great.
telling you the election is rigged won't even not even smart enough to wear a mask when they're breaking the law.
And
So I have a lot of friends that I live in a nice community, but I put an African flag. I have a big old African flag on the front of my house. And my friends were like, you should take that down. You know, they're going to shoot at your house. And I said, I might shoot
Burn it
back.
across in your yard.
I like that. I might shoot back.
I don't.
I might shoot back.
There you go. Thank you very much. I'm taking my flag down, but I might shoot back.
Yeah. Some people, I mean, nobody has said anything to me about it except my friends. They're like, you're just making yourself a target. And I was like, hey, it's a free country.
You're already a target, right?
Yeah, that's right.
You got the
Melanin makes
skin,
me a target.
you know?
Hey, TWrecks, I wanted to hit you on something. I don't know if you ever heard this, but and I knew about what happened in LA and the CIA coming through and saying and admitting that they did put, push drugs in. But do you know the first time that crack was actually created?
They created it. They didn't just push it.
But the first time that it existed before, the Nazis used at the last portion of the war. The Nazis used crack.
Crystal meth, man.
Crystal meth.
Adolf Hitler had his own formula for crystal meth.
Yeah, and they used to sell it in the
off the car
drugstores.
battery. Really, they'd get a bunch of rusted car battery and chop it up. That was the Nazis' crystal meth.
Yeah, and they sold it in drugstores.
That's not crack though.
Oh yeah, you're right. It was crystal meth. But yeah, that mass distribution kind of thing. Yeah, that happened.
It was created.
Yeah.
Ron Siegel, the CIA of our government, paid him money to create crack for the sole purpose to exterminate black people. It took him 14 years to do it.
Yeah.
You understand? He did it in the basement of UCLA, and he has testified about it in court.
Yeah.
I think it was under Reagan. I'm pretty sure it was under Reagan. And then Bush came in and just started really perpetuating, putting us in jail and killing, it is what it is,
3 strikes.
But it failed. It failed because we're still here. It failed because we're still here. The purpose was to exterminate us.
I always say that they tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds.
No, that's great.
I like that.
That's snappy.
Yeah, there you go.
It's true though. That's what happened.
Obama said Obama would say that's a snappy phrase. He said what he said about defunding the police. That's snappy.
It's true though. It's true. Now I'm a product of the South, and I grew up in the 60s in the South, and I talked about on some of the other shows that my first year in school, and even after they desegregated everybody didn't desegregate, but they would separate the classrooms and things like that. But you know, I always, even as a young kid, experiencing some of those things that people will say, oh, that's racism. I always ask myself in my core, what is race really? So when the TWrecks says, you know, there are 3 races, how do you define race? What's your perspective on race?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
TWrecks?
Yeah.
As far as what exactly?
I
A little bit
mean,
more specifically, what do
when
you mean?
you say there are 3 races, what's your definition of a race?
Well, of course, there's a human race, but like the gentleman said earlier, he said there's a construct. Race was constructed in a certain way for a certain purpose, but when you break it down, it's just whites, non-whites, and white supremacists. Now, everybody wants to lump us in with Mexicans and this, that, and the other, but those can be some of the most anti-black people on the planet is Mexicans. And let me tell you something else. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm a moralist. I'm all about morals. But these Democrats are going to legalize 10 million Mexicans, and the first thing these Mexicans going to do is they're going to come over here and they're going to vote Republican. Does that make any sense to you? Do you understand what I'm saying?
TWrecks,
Let me say that one more time. The Democrats are going to legalize 10 million Mexicans in this country, and those 10 million Mexicans are going to vote Republican. They couldn't be more stupid if you cut their head off, you know?
And TWrecks, that was one of the things that I saw Biden do that I was kind of upset about, and people didn't understand why. And I was like, well, you know, when you think about it, immigration in America is all about, you know, subordinating and assigning classes. And at the end of the day, when you think about the first immigrants, which were European immigrants, they came in during the land rush and they got all of this free land. See, people's been getting free.
Wait a minute. Wait, what? Can I stop you right there first?
What's up?
They came in. Not only did they came in, they starved first before they came in, and they were saved. Everybody, every colony came over here started starving because they didn't know how to cultivate the land.
Right.
Don't leave that out. Please don't leave that out.
Right. But, you know, back to what I was saying with, you know, they came over, they got all of these thousands and actually millions of acres of land. And the purpose of that was pretty much to say, hey, the American dream is you come over here, you get free land, you get free labor, and you get to get wealthy. So it was almost like an advertisement. So the first immigrants were obviously the European immigrants that came over here, and they were supposed to be assigned to the second class. And then you had all the other immigrants coming in, and you had the Asians coming in, you had the Hispanics coming in. And meanwhile, African Americans or native blacks, however you want to put us, you know, we become second class citizens, third class citizens. For now, we're fifth class citizens. So I didn't like what Biden did with that either, because Biden essentially, you know, put Hispanics before he put people who've been here for 500 years that has built this country and that has created the wealth that we call America. So, yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that construct a little bit. Most countries that have an immigrant population that are migrating people into the country, those immigrants are going to adhere, to your point, are going to adhere to the power construct. They are going to do whatever they need to do to fit in. And so if you're in that construct and you see who has the power, that's who you're going to align yourself with. So I totally agree with TWrecks. They just created a whole bunch more Republicans because they don't have anything, and they're going to migrate and they're going to gravitate to where the power is.
And
it's sad.
The states.
And Star, I hope I answered your question properly.
Yes, you did. You did. You did.
The states they're going to gravitate to are Republican states.
Yeah. Yeah.
Traditionally.
And there are more of them. There are more of them. There are more
But
Republicans.
the Democrats, I don't even know if the Democrats realize that. I don't know if they realize that that's what's happening. I don't even know if they're aware of that.
And I'll tell you why I say that. I have traveled the world, and I've been in countries where they have migrated populations that come in. And I'll give you an example. I've seen people down in Florida that come in from Cuba, or they come in from Haiti. those are some of, across the diaspora, those are some of the most nilotic people. That means very dark-skinned, melanated people that you will ever see on the planet, because a lot of them didn't get contaminated kind of in the slave trade. And so they'll come here and they'll become citizens, and you look at their birth certificate, it says Caucasian.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's a big problem.
I've seen it.
That's a big problem.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Look at Sammy
So,
Sosa,
your
the baseball player. He bleached his skin because you want to
Oh
be
my
white.
God, yeah,
He's Cuban. He's dark. He was darker than me.
yeah.
Retired from baseball, being one of the best home run hitters of all time. Went down to Cuba and bleached his skin.
Yeah.
Because that's the mentality.
Be in the sun anymore.
They're a conquered black folk. They're conquered in the mind. Their mind is conquered by white supremacy. They have no more fight in them at all. They're not from the soil, the slavery soil of the United States. You can tell the mentality is different. You know?
Yeah. And with all of that, I try and put myself in the equation based on who I am as a human being and how I move in the world. I can't change, and I say this for myself, I can't change any of the dynamics that's going on. I can't change people's perception, their self-hatred, any of that. But what I can do is work across this panel and in organizations, and I'm on the diversity and inclusion within my company on that team, and I can be a part of dialogue like this. I can talk to younger people or talk to even older people, because sometimes they're the worst. I have people in my own family that are not real pro-black. So I mean, but I'm saying all this to say the best I can do as a human being right now is to try and shift the narrative and change people's perspective. And that's not always going to be successful. And I'm okay with that. But all I can say is I've done my best.
Okay, I want to jump in here as the old white guy.
The old white guy.
You may be onto something in that there are only three races: white supremacists, whites, and
that's it,
and non-whites. And for the whites, it is time that just not being racist is enough. It's not enough anymore. It's not enough just to not be racist as a white person. You have to be anti-racist, in my opinion. Your thoughts on that? Everybody. Let's start with Apollo, because we haven't heard from Apollo. Apollo, jump in here, man.
I guess my thoughts on, I was just everybody's talking about history and all that stuff. But I mean, me, I like to keep stuff basic, and I hear what everybody's saying, but bottom line is this country was built on crap. I ain't gonna cuss, I'm gonna call it crap. End of the day, you gotta tear it down and rebuild it, because it started off with people building it based on negative thoughts and ignorance and evil. And that's what the country was built on. And they made everyone out to what they wanted them to be. And it's been passed on generation to generation. And they pass it on with their ignorance, with fear, by plotting people against each other. And so the end of the day is the problem with race. I mean, the solution to racism is we got to tear this, whatever they done built down, and start from scratch and rebuild it. And that's why I'm so about getting to the youth, because, at our age, we can only do so much, but we need to start reprogramming all that we can that's coming up next, because this country was built from day one on evil and wrongdoing. And it was like class-based, and everyone's being looked at the way they want to be looked at. And it was all dictated by some evil people, whoever that may be. It was dictated by evil people. And we got to tear it down and rebuild it. Everything got to be tore down and rebuilt. And the way that starts is everyone come together, have conversations, express how they feel, and let's work together to rebuild and change what America is, because America was built on crap. So that's why it stinks so bad. So we got to
built on
start a foundation.
America was built on cotton. Period. And that's where I got all this wool from.
Yeah.
But real quick, okay, I know Apollo, I know Star, I know Barry. What's the other gentleman's name and the woman that's in here? I don't know her name.
King and Marie Justus.
King and Marie Justus. Okay, nice to meet you. I just want, because I don't know, I didn't know them two before. I know you three from watching the show. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a great point, Apollo. But you know, the part of tearing it down is trying to get over the hurdle of that construct. It's so ingrained. It's like trying to take an oak tree down, you know, or trying to take an oak tree down from the roots. After Reconstruction, America had an opportunity to, but the power construct was so embedded and so ingrained that even as Black people tried to rise out of Reconstruction by becoming politicians and creating their own businesses, the hatred and the fear of the other doing better than them led them to murder, desecrate, and to just try and wipe out their, I mean, we don't even know the people that were lynched and pits that were dug in Mississippi and some of these other places that Black bodies were thrown into. We don't even know because it wasn't reported, because we didn't matter. So to tear it down and build it back up, we first have to we have to dig up those roots. That's the only way the tree is going to come down.
And if I can add too, I think we are going to have the time of our lives trying to correct this, because when you think about who's in control of the dominant white society, they're not just going to say, here you go.
No.
No. That is their largest fear when we talk about liberating Black folks, like truly liberating. They are afraid that, like Star Child said, we are going to pass and surpass and take control. And, you know, that's where we come into the society. We call this is a majority rule society. And if they become a minority, they no longer rule. So they're not going to let go of that power easily. And it's not going to be an easy task at all to tear down and rebuild. And tearing down is probably going to be next near to impossible unless we all unify.
And the white privilege of just the idea that it's not so much worrying about you passing them up. It's worrying about Black people getting even for everything white people have done. Yeah. I've got to be honest with you, man. That permeates through a bunch of white people.
We can't get even because there's white supremacy.
They don't think about you just using the system and passing them up.
Right.
Which would be really to do.
As long as there's a police force, you don't have to worry about that.
And we want to be able to practice self-determination. I think at the end of the day, we want self-determination.
Yeah.
Think about it. We don't own, operate our own schools. We don't own or operate anything in politics. We don't control any wealth in this country. We don't have anything in this country. We just want to be able to govern ourselves like the Native Americans do. Why can't we govern ourselves?
Sovereignty. Exactly. Marie, you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
Oh, I mean, I do. I agree. I'm in with the conversation going, yes, that's, it's going to be, it's going to be a journey. It's going to be a long road, but, you know, we have to have the courage to go back and have the conversations, and the conversations that need to be had about the things that were, the atrocities that were done, the things, you know, that were hate-filled, that weren't right, that, I mean, we don't want to focus on those things, but we have to have the courage to go back and have that conversation and admit where there were wrongs. And I don't know why it hasn't been done. It still confounds me sometimes that we're at this place in 2021, but I'm glad that the conversation is being had, that the, you know, the lines are being opened up, that, you know, I can go and I can have a conversation with somebody that looks like me and say, hey, this is where some understanding needs to be had, you know? And if you don't understand, put yourself in a position to where you can ask questions or you can have a conversation. Be willing to be uncomfortable, because guess what? The other side has been uncomfortable a whole lot longer than you have. And
Absolutely.
it will be.
That's a great message to white people right there.
Hey, Doofus, can you talk a little bit about our points on reconciliation and what we'd like to do in terms of reconciliation, like what Marie is talking about?
Who did you direct that to?
You.
Me?
Yeah. Remember we talked about reconciliation and how we'd like to weave some of that into some of these panels as an objective at some point.
Absolutely. Because, and it's because people are going to open their eyes. People are going to open their eyes, and people are going to have to confront what's been going on, what's been swept under the rug, what's been held silent. And part of what we want to do is offer a platform for reconciliation, if you will, for the ability to come together and to talk with people of different cultures and develop some sort of understanding. It's a whole lot easier when you've actually heard from somebody what they've gone through than it is to just sit back and make your judgment based upon preconceived notions that have been passed down from generation to generation to generation. We've got to break all that. We've got to break all of that. And we're not going to fix 500 years of problems in a year. But if we don't start, we're not ever going to fix it. Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at.
And I bring that point up about reconciliation because I had traveled in South Africa a few years, and every year that I went, I would go to like Cape Town, and then I would visit like Nelson Mandela's home as kind of a really out of respect for him. But there is a museum there in Cape Town, that the Reconciliation Museum, and the way that they set it up is you had to walk through like the history of South Africa, and it's visual and it's audible, and you're walking like through this tunnel, and it's everywhere around you. And I literally saw people walking out of there of all races crying, almost like they had to endure and feel what those people were feeling at that time. And you see them, I mean, it was so powerful. In fact, they used the same model for the Holocaust Museum here or in DC.
Go figure.
Yeah, so that's where reconciliation is really powerful.
And to build on that too, I think what another panelist was saying about, needing to address it, I think our government has practiced a lot of benign neglect, and they've ignored the issue as if it's just going to go away, and they wished it away, and it hasn't gone away. So I think, Barry, you and your organization is a good way to keep that in the forefront of conversations when we talk about race relations, and we talk about how we make America great, not again, make America great. I think that is one of the most important parts, is to really keep that in the conversation.
Let me just give you a quick idea of what it's like here in Indiana. I ran for Congress against Mike Pence, the just recently left the vice presidency. I ran against him 3 times, and I got more votes than anybody else ever has in this district because I had good people working with me. And I had 2 really good interns, and both of those interns went on to become, they're both attorneys now. And I mentioned the other night in an episode that I'd called 2 attorneys. I called them about E.A.R, but then I asked them about the Grandmaster J case. And when I told them about E.A.R, one of them says, "Why in the world would you want to put a target on your back at your age by starting a pro-Black organization in Indiana? That's just going to get you killed."
I didn't know this was a pro-black organization.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what I said. I said, now, this isn't.
I didn't either.
As long as it's not amateur black.
I said, this is. And
Yeah.
that's what I said. I said, this is not a pro-black organization. It's a pro-humanity organization.
Exactly.
And he said, yeah, I totally understand that. But you got to understand, you're in Indiana. 70% of the people are going to say, that's a pro-black organization. What are you doing starting a pro-black organization? So we've got a lot of work to do. And especially in the place where I live.
Yeah.
Hey,
So-
Barry, is this going to be aired, this video that we're on? This conference?
Absolutely.
I want to lay something to rest. And if you don't mind looking up some statistics real quick for me, I want to lay something to rest for everybody out there.
Is this about me?
No, it's about
Okay.
Chicago and the murders in Chicago.
Oh,
That
okay.
everybody always talks about are out of control, right? So in 2020, how many black on black homicides was? Can you look that information up?
Right now?
Yeah.
Um,
No, don't worry about it. What I got written down is 700 homicides in Chicago last year
okay.
out of 810,000 black people in Chicago. So I just want to lay that to rest. I want to just lay that little
Oh, I
myth
got
about
you. Yeah.
Chicago being, all completely out of control, And I want to say, I'm not sure, but I want to say the 700 is total of Chicago and not just black on black homicide, but I could be wrong. That's why I wanted you to look up the information.
Okay.
I got a little stuff written down here, but anybody listening tonight on this broadcast, I want to put that that to rest, because that's a big talking point. People always want to bring up how blacks are killing black. I want to put that to rest tonight.
The media,
Understand?
the media is a big factor in that. The media is a big factor in black.
Absolutely.
And crime's based upon proximity. It's not.
That's right.
I'm just saying numbers.
I was just going to say that.
That's what I bury that whole Chicago so bad thing. You understand?
Yeah. Basically, the narrative is always misconstrued. Black on black crime. People hang on to these like Fox News talking points. People kill who is in their proximity.
700 out of 810,000.
Yeah.
Right. There are more white people in the country that kill each other every day because there are more of them, but you never hear anybody talk about white on white crime. Right.
You never
So
will.
when people bring me that narrative, I'm like, pump your brakes.
Right.
Pump your brakes.
And in Indiana and King, probably in Louisville too, on the local news, when there is a murder, they'll say a man killed.
That's right.
Such. When there is a murder by a black person, they'll say a black man killed.
Well, here's the thing. Just like I said, 700 murders out of 810,000. So that shows you how biased the media is. They don't even report on the good, the negative. You know what I'm saying? The other 800,000 people never report any good to those people. That shows you how crooked the media is. Yeah.
I wanted to say too, by the way, let's not forget the number one cause of crime, which is poverty.
Poverty. That's right.
Invest into these neighborhoods, and you give these teenagers, because it's really the younger group, 25 and under, that's really doing a lot of this violence. If you give them outlets, if you give them avenues, if you give them away, let's think about it. You grew up, all you've seen is crime, drugs, prostitution, poverty. What hope are you going to have to be anything other than a drug dealer, a gangbanger, a basketball player? So it's just like, I think they need to get to, because people bring up black on black crime like it's the root. It is not the root. It is a symptom to a much larger problem that I call poverty. And it's just like, hey, if we correct the poverty issue, we correct almost every other issue associated with what the subject matter that we're talking about. So I just wanted to add that too, because people fail to realize that, stop paying attention to the symptom and pay more attention to what we can do to help solve the root issue to the problem.
And that's an excellent point. I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. And the sad part is that, to show you the level of hopelessness, when you look at the statistics, most young men that are involved in crime or that kill other young men within those environments, they live and die within a 10-mile radius. They live and die, even if they get older. There are a lot of people that never come out of that environment because the level of hopelessness or the level of fear that they, that they want to be a part of where they're from, they live and die within a 10-mile radius.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter. I just wanted to make that big leap from 800,000 Black people in Chicago, 700 out of 800,000 killed. And I just want to lay that myth to bed tonight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great point. That's a great point.
All right. I think we've had an excellent discussion. We've been going on about an hour. If we go on too much longer, people won't watch us. And we want everybody to watch us. So let's try to wrap things up here with like last words.
Hey, Barry, can the last words be possible solutions from each
Absolutely. Absolutely. What's a step that can be taken?
Yeah.
Who do we start with?
And I'll start. My step is white people join E.A.R. Quit being quiet. It's not enough anymore to be silent. It's not enough just to say, I'm not racist. It's time to say, we need to end racism. Okay, that's my final word.
Yeah.
James? Oh, I'm sorry, King? Yeah.
It's all right. My solution.
And King is not from Miami, Florida. So don't you think that? Go ahead, my man.
My solution is in these books. I think we need to get more educated and start picking up books and reading about not only history, but reading about how we can solve the current
Is that
problem.
Dr. Claude Anderson?
Dr. Claude Anderson. I would recommend every Black and white person
Absolutely.
pick this book up.
Yes.
His material. He is somebody that I consider to have a master plan to really solving the social construct issues in Black America. And there's a lot of other, Chancellor Williams is another one, but
Chancellor Williams is deep.
He brings modern
Chancellor
day.
Williams has the answers.
He
in that book.
Modern day solutions to the problems that I think that we can start working on. So that's
right. Can I ask you something real quick? What would those two gentlemen that you just mentioned, what would they think about what we're trying to do here?
I don't know. I think they would think it's a noble cause, and they think, especially Dr. Claude Anderson, he's very vocal about how he feels about different movements. And, he believes that, we need all the different movements that we can get. We need all the help that we can get. It's not going to be one solution to all of these problems.
Yeah.
So I think he would think this is a very noble cause and it's much needed.
Okay.
But I think each one of them would say, in the interim of the objectives that they have put forth,
right.
That's some peripheral, that's peripheral, but stay on track, stay on code, so yeah. I think Marie will be next.
Yeah, I would just, I would say that, have conversations with people that look like me about joining E.A.R. And about, I feel that where it really starts is with our youth and setting up, programs where they can, be, taught. I don't really even know. I know you can't teach empathy, but we need to be taught the truth about the past, but not leave it at a place of distinction. With I'm talking about like young kids. Being able to be truthful about America's past, but also how we can, make it the United States that we want it, or the world that we want it, really, and not like be the change that you want to see. you know, you start with being the change that you want to see in the world and being the light.
That's a good point. Excellent point. Apollo?
I say we just got to promote interactions and conversations so we can heal, learn to trust each other, learn to look at each other, you know, based on our characters and keep it at that. And, you know, we got to face what happened in history, but we also got to live in the moment. And the moment is let's heal. Let's combine our resources once we heal and understand each other. And let's help each other out to get to a better place for the sake of our children, the people coming up, and for our present day. Let's just interact and come together and figure things out and be understanding and let everybody vent what they got to say. But at the end of the day, let's do it for the purpose of healing and coming together and moving forward and making some changes together, all of us as one race.
Learning from our past, surviving our present, and building for our future.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. TWrecks, I think TWrecks is next.
I was going to say, I think right now, you know, the lesson for Black people right now, if you can't go back and look at what happened on the 6th and see how these angry animals react to their quote unquote freedom, it's a learning lesson. What happened on the 6th, you need to take away from what happened on the 6th for exactly what it is. Don't sit back and think that was a one-day thing. That showed a lot of colors. You had doctors in there. You understand? So you have people, surgeons that are working on your body up in there. You understand? So that's where we're at. And I recommend that everybody with Black skin look upon what happened on the 6th and take away from it what you can. Now there's a book out there. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, the Turner Diaries.
Mm.
Yep.
You heard of that book?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That book is what all this madness is circulated around. All this Proud Boy stuff, all this leaderless society stuff. That's what all this is about, period. And that was a book that Timothy McVeigh slept with underneath his pillow every night and ended up blowing up a hospital, you know, or a government building, excuse me.
Yeah.
So that's what we're dealing with in America right now. So infiltrated law enforcement, you got doctors raiding the U.S. Capitol, doing 10 years because it was worth them off a lie of an election. So that's where we're at. So
with no mask on.
All forms of oppression right now. You understand? So I advise every Black person to take heed of that, what happened on the 6th, and study what happened on the 6th and pick it apart, and just to see how the wickedness that you're dealing with. I really can't emphasize that enough. And I also, you know, I'm not trying to get too grim, but I also recommend that you go out and get yourself some concealable body armor if you're Black, because there's going to be a lot more police shootings underneath Biden. So anybody listening to this, go and get you some body armor, period. And that's all I got to say. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, everybody.
Oh, thank you for coming on. Thank all of you for coming on. Star, give us our last word.
And so it's not a bad habit, but throughout my life, I've had a habit of just being very observant. I watch people and how they move in the world, and especially white people. I don't know why I do this, but I just go up and strike a conversation just so I can really try to understand. One, I have two objectives, sometimes just to understand what they're really feeling and all of the action that they're doing, but then just to blow their mind to that I would have the audacity to go up and strike a conversation. It makes them, even if they fake it, it makes them have to be human. And so I say that, and I do that too with Black people that have like these, you know, this hatred and this, you know, like, and I do it not just for laughs, but just trying to combine people and help them and shock them kind of into humanity and make them think about things in a different, from a different perspective. And so to TWrecks's point too, I'm a very humanistic and empathetic person, but I agree. I think that if you are not in a position that you're not protecting your families from all angles and at all levels, you're misconceived about this time that we're living in, and where we are in this country right now. So, I think everybody should take heed to that.
One final thing, because I forgot to do it at the beginning. I had a couple of people ask about the background you have there, Star. Could you talk
about the background? I want to say something about the background.
Could you talk about
Yeah, this is so I've traveled and I go to, as a pilgrimage, I go to Egypt like every couple of years, and this was a papyrus that I bought, and it is the coronation of Asar, Aset, and Heru. Mm-hmm. And if you know the history of Asar, Aset, and Heru, when you look at the Immaculate Conception, it was the original Immaculate Conception. I don't have time to go into the story, but that's what it is. It's a coronation ceremony.
Now, are you realize that those creatures used to exist with the eagle head and the dog head on the human body? You know those used to exist for real, right?
Yeah, they say there was a lot of genetic splicing going on back there, with the Nephilim, and
exactly. So that's what they're saying. That those actually existed. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a different topic.
Yeah. So yeah, I have a few of these around the house, but this one, a guy in Hawaii framed it for me in acrylic, and it is the dark papyrus, and I got it from a curator that knew what he was doing when he gave it to me. Let me just say that.
Have you ever heard of Tony Browder?
Yes. Yeah, I've done the tour, the Egypt on the Egypt in DC, or the Nile in DC. I've done that tour with him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And all the symbolism.
Is Apollo still on here?
Yeah.
Where you at, Apollo?
Right here.
Yeah, I was looking at one of the old shows you had. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Star. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Go ahead.
I just want to. I seen one of the old Apollo shows with Barry, and he had the 420 hat in the studio.
Yeah.
You know what 420 is, though, right?
Multiple things behind it. Yeah.
No, it's Hitler's birthday.
Yeah.
It's Hitler's birthday. So I was looking at Star's background, and I was looking at your background on one of the old videos, and I wanted to just say that those creatures used to exist. And I just wanted to, warn you that 420 is Hitler's birthday. Just want to give you the heads up on that. It ain't just a weed day. That's what it is. You understand?
Souvenir from Las Vegas, man. I keep it simple.
Yeah. There you go.
Hey, Apollo, show them your sweatshirt real quick.
Oh, my, stop the racism.
Yeah, and we're going to have one of those with
have a bunch of
E.A.R. on it.
Merch on the websites.
Yeah.
Put it all together.
Here, I'll pop up. Hope you can get a good.
That's awesome, man.
Hey, Barry, get a t-shirt that says there's just whites, and white supremacists. Or whites, non-whites, and white supremacists t-shirt, the E.A.R.
I can wear that in Greenfield and not have a problem.
So guys, I have a t-shirt that says, stop parading your patriotism, stop parading your racism as patriotism.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
That's blast right there.
That one stirs sometimes. People are like, why is she wearing that? I'm like, because I can.
You're un-American.
It's America.
And the flag.
All right, y'all, have a good evening. I'm out. Peace.
Like people looking at me all side-eyed and stuff. I'm like, don't come for me unless I send for you.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all. I love you all. Thank you all for watching us. Star, take us out. Say goodbye.
Yeah, just want to thank everyone that's on this panel. I think, again, this is work. And all of you here are going to be a part of that work. Just being a part of this meeting today, I think has set a trajectory for us to start thinking about things and how we move in the world and what our solutions are. So thank you very much.
All right. Good night, everybody.
All right, see you.
Good night, all.
All right. Thanks for having me on, Barry.